There's a film you sat through to the end, even though you stopped enjoying it 40 minutes in. A course you finished after you knew it was useless. A relationship that lasted a year longer than it should have. In every one of those, you knew you were not confused about whether it was working. You kept going anyway. That is not weakness of character. It is one of the most reliable patterns in human decision-making, and it has a name. A sunk cost is anything you've already spent that you cannot get back. Money, time, effort, reputation. The fallacy is letting that spending influence what you do next. Economically, the past should be irrelevant. The only question that matters is what happens from here. But almost nobody decides that way, including people who know the term. In 1985, Arkes and Catherine Blumer ran an experiment at a university theater. People buying season tickets were randomly given one of three prices. Full price, a small discount, or a large discount. Same seats, same place. The only difference was what they paid. Then the researchers counted how many performances each group attended. The people who paid full price attended significantly more. Nothing about the plays differed. The only thing driving attendance was money already spent and unrecoverable. Walking away forces an admission. It means saying the earlier decision was wrong. Continuing lets you postpone that admission indefinitely. So the discomfort you are avoiding is not financial. It is about self-image. You are not protecting the money. The money is already gone. You are protecting the story that you make good decisions. That is why the effect gets stronger when other people know what you spent. Sunk cost rarely operates alone. It pairs with loss aversion, the finding that losses feel roughly twice as intense as equivalent gains. Quitting converts a vague, ongoing situation into a definite, countable loss. Continuing keeps the loss theoretical. So the mind picks the option that feels smaller, even when it costs more. This is why people double down instead of stopping. Doubling down keeps the loss unrealized for a little longer. In the 1960s, Britain and France began building a supersonic passenger jet together, Concorde. Long before it flew commercially, internal projections were clear. It was not going to recover what it cost to develop. Both governments kept funding it anyway. Part of that was national prestige, and part was diplomatic. The agreement was hard to exit, but the pattern was familiar enough that biologists borrowed the name. In behavioral ecology, persisting with a doomed investment because of what you already sank into it is still called the Concorde fallacy. It is worth sitting with the scale of that. Two national governments, decades of engineering, some of the best technical minds available. And the decision structure was the same one that keeps you in a bad film. In 1976, Barry Staw ran a study with the title people still quote, knee-deep in the big muddy. Participants played business school executives allocating research funding to a division. Then they were told how that division performed and given a second round of money to allocate. Here is the finding. When the participant had personally made the first funding decision, and it went badly, they put more money in on the second round. Not less. People who inherited someone else's failing decision did the sensible thing and cut funding. People who owned the failure escalated. That is the sunk cost effect and self-justification working together. It also explains something you have probably watched happen. The person who cannot kill a project is almost always the person who started it. Careers are the expense aversion. Someone spends 6 years training for something they no longer want. Leaving means those 6 years become, in their mind, wasted. So they spend another 20 protecting the 6. The arithmetic is brutal and almost nobody runs it. The 6 years are gone either way. The only thing still in play is the 20. Knowing the name does not switch it off. Arkes and Blumer's participants were not stupid, and the researchers themselves are not immune. What helps is changing the question you ask. Not, how much have I put into this? Instead, if I arrived here today, knowing nothing about the history, would I choose this? If the answer is no, the history is not a reason. It is an explanation. Those are different things. First, decide the exit before you start. Write down, in advance, what result would make you stop. You are far more honest about a project before you have paid for it. Your past self is the only version of you that is not defending anything. Second, Get the decision away from the person who made it. That is the direct implication of Staw's result. Ask someone with no history in it what they would do. Not for permission, for the read. Third, say the number out loud. Sunk cost survives on vagueness. It weakens when you actually write down what continuing costs from here. Notice that all three work by removing the self-justification, not by adding willpower. That is deliberate. Willpower is not the failing mechanism here. There is a genuinely interesting thread in the research, and it needs hedging. Some studies find young children show the effect less than adults do. There is also a long-running and unresolved argument about whether non-human animals show it at all. The results there are mixed, and the experiments are hard to design cleanly. So treat this as a suggestive pattern, not an established fact. But the suggestion is this. Sunk cost may require the very thing we think of as sophistication. A sense of self that can be embarrassed. A story about your own competence that needs protecting. A 4-year-old abandons a boring game without ceremony because nothing is at stake for their identity. If that reading holds, the fallacy is not a flaw in your reasoning. It is a cost of having a self-image at all. Let us run one properly with numbers because the abstract version is easy to agree with and hard to use. Say you're 18 months into a 2-year qualification you have stopped wanting. 18 months of evenings. Several thousand in fees. Everyone you know is aware you're doing it. The instinct is to say you are nearly there, so you should finish. Notice that the phrase nearly there is doing all of the work, and it is describing the past. Run it forward instead. 6 months of evenings remain. That is the price from here. Everything else is already paid and unrecoverable. Now the question is answerable. Is what this qualification gets you worth 6 months of evenings, starting today? Sometimes yes. Often the answer is obviously yes, and the 18 months never needed to enter it. But sometimes the honest answer is no, and the only thing keeping you in the chair is the 18 months. That is the case where you are paying 6 real months to protect 18 that are already spent. Same facts, different question, completely different decision. There's a version of this that is not a fallacy. Persistence is continuing because the future payoff is genuinely there. Sunk cost is continuing because the past payment was large. From the outside, they look identical. From the inside, one of them makes you check the numbers and the other makes you avoid them. That is the tell. If you find yourself unwilling to actually calculate whether it is still worth it, you already know the answer. One last reframe, because the film example undersells this badly. 2 hours of a bad film is not the damage. The damage is what the same structure does at scale. Every hour committed to something already failing is an hour unavailable for something that is not. Economists call that opportunity cost, and it is close to invisible by design. The failing thing is concrete. You can see it, you are inside it, it has your name attached. The alternative is abstract. It does not exist yet, so there is nothing to weigh. So the comparison is never fair. You are putting something vivid against something hypothetical. And that is the same distortion again, one layer up. Here is the version worth keeping. The money is gone. The years are gone. Nothing you do next recovers them. The only thing that is still yours is what comes after this moment. Sunk cost is what happens when you let the part you cannot change make decisions about the part you can.